but you look on blogs that concentrate on the Lennon assassination, and they mention Mark David Chapman, and then they mention World Vision, and that's where it stops. You don't actually get any kind of confirmation of where this comes from. I haven't been able, all the books and all the magazines and all the articles that I've looked at and owned and read, and I get the names, I see the names linked together on a page, Mark David Chapman, World Vision, but I don't actually get any source links to verify either whether Mark David Chapman is linked to World Vision CIA or whether World Vision is linked to CIA. And I've had to do my own detective work, especially for this podcast, to be able to identify whether there are any actual links at all. And there are links.
Matt, what does
there are, but they either seem to not be available for like, you know, us, the average Joe, or scrubbed, or just not talked about, because you're right, it just stops. And there hasn't been like a detailed biography of Mark David Chapman or anything like that we can kind of, you know, look at either, because, you know, nobody wants to make him famous. So
what has Mark Lewison really said about this, Matt?
Oh, well, he hasn't got that far yet, has he? We could wait another 20 years for that.
He's still stuck in the 60s, is he?
Yeah.
Who's this?
Yeah, 1962.
Mark Lewison, the biographer.
Oh.
But what I've discovered, and I'm not saying that this makes it all true and that Mark David Chapman was Intel assassinator just because I found this particular information. It's up to the listener what I can tell you now, what I'm about to tell you, if you want to hear it, whether, you know, it's up to the listener to judge whether it all links together nicely or not. But what I've been able to find with regards to World Vision, CIA, and Mark David Chapman is basically Mark Chapman in the 1970s, and this would have been after the YMCA Beirut thing. He in conjunction with the YMCA, he went to work at a refugee settlement camp at Fort Chaffee. Is that how you pronounce it? Fort Chaffee in Arkansas. And this was after the end of the Vietnam War, and he was dealing with Vietnamese refugees, a resettlement camp for that. So again, it was this kind of, he's working in a camp counseling kind of sort of environment, and he was just, so the official story goes, what he was doing there was basically he was helping the refugees to you know, acclimatize to a new environment, as it were. He was providing physical and leisure activities for them, for the thousands of refugees that were going there. So the thing with World Vision is, and again, this is according to authors, researchers that have pieced this together and that I've been able to find. It would appear that, according to the research that I've discovered, that the CIA and World Vision were working together, not only with regards to the Vietnam War, but also with Cuba. I've got an article here that states World Vision had a hand in the movement of the Cubans into the United States and other refugees of revolutionary regimes. World Vision was able to recruit out of these mercenary populations people who could be politically tuned and turned to their intelligence purposes. World Vision served as a covert penetration force for the CIA, not as visible as the military actually going in. So they were going in as missionaries and working among the people. And and that's taken from the book Spiritual Warfare by Sarah Diamond. Or is that Sarah Diamond? I don't know. But I've also found another quote, and I'm just flipping through the pages here. In tandem with its food distribution and leadership training for indigenous believers, World Vision has on a number of occasions functioned as an intelligence gathering arm of the US government in the 1970s. In the 70s, World Vision was charged with having collected field data for the CIA in Vietnam after US troops left the region. World Vision played a major role in the administration of refugee camps. And again, if I'm not mistaken, that's also taken from the same book by Sarah Diamond. So, you know, and this would have been around the same time period that World Vision and the CIA would have been up to no good with the refugee camps with regards to Vietnam. And of course, around the same time that Mark David Chapman, of course, would have been involved with refugee camps. Whether Fort Chaffee in Arkansas was one of those, I don't know. I don't know.
It seems seemingly impossible to find that information to know if they're linked or not, but it seems that they are. But as far as
you can also link
World
Hinckley
Vision
to this. Hinckley links to this because John Hinckley's father, John W. Hinckley Sr., who's also known as Jack Hinckley, I think he was a wealthy businessman. He dealt in oil and the gas business. And he was also friendly with the family were friendly with the Bushes. I mean, that's the other thing we haven't mentioned is that on the day that Reagan was shot, the vice president, George H.W. Bush, his son Neil, and this was according to mainstream reports at the time, Neil is claimed to have been all set to host a dinner party at his house with a member of the Hinckley family as his guest, and then it was cancelled after the shooting. So, but yeah, I mean, if you dig deep, you'll find that actually the Hinckley family, parts of the Hinckley family were financing George H.W. Bush's bid to become the vice president.
It's the same with the Bin Ladens one generation later, wasn't it?
I know, right? It just never stops with that family, does it?
It just doesn't. They have their fingers in everything, it seems.
And they have their fingers in World Vision. They have their fingers in World Vision because John Hinckley's father, Jack Hinckley, as I say, was a wealthy businessman in the oil and gas business. So that's how he would have known the Bushes, because they were in oil and gas and energy and everything. He also became an active member of World Vision, which apparently, in case anyone doesn't know, it's like a California-based Christian-flavored relief and development agency. So it's another kind of YMCA in a way, if you like, but they can get into different countries under the guise of so-called quote-unquote relief humanitarian aid. They can go to various countries and provide that. So the claim is that the CIA used them, as I said, they used them in order to do that. But yeah, the CIA used them in order to do out their deeds for them covertly. But yeah, apparently Hinckley was not only a donor of World Vision, but he was actually a president of the board of World Vision. So you can collate all this stuff together and
talking about the CIA, as we have a lot up to now, we should throw Jose Perdomo into the mix. We do need to cover him because he's said to have been a CIA assassin, and he just happens to crop up as the doorman on the Dakota on the night that John Lennon was shot. And there is a school of thought that he may have actually been the assassin rather than Chapman. But I think you may feel that's a bit of a false lead there, don't you, Desiree?
Well, I'm not sure that has been proposed. I don't know that he might have been another assailant, but there is some eerie and strange coincidences. Talking just about World Vision just now, and how Matt said that they were in with the refugee camps from Cuba. Well, that's actually where Perdomo is said to have come from. He was in one of those Cuban refugee camps. That's how he came to the United States in the first place. And after a while became kind of like a leader or like a trainer of sorts, kind of like Mark David Chapman has been said to have been as well. And he was supposedly a part of Operation 40. This is Perdomo now. That was commissioned to try to assassinate Fidel Castro in the 60s. And there's just some interesting correlations with that. And then somehow, in 1980, 15 years later, he's the doorman at the Dakota building and is one of only, I think there's a total of 4 witnesses of what exactly happened that night. One being John Lennon himself, one being Yoko, one being Mark David Chapman, and the other being Jose Perdomo. So it's interesting, like why a former CIA informant or assassin or whatnot, why exactly would he be there? Could be a complete coincidence. He retired and this was just something he could do and enjoyed doing, and that's fine. But it's just odd how all of these strange little coincidences and alignments line up, And then it kind of just leaves you scratching your head like, well, that seems to be kind of perfect, odd that it all works out this way. So
and Operation 40 is said to have been involved in the Kennedy assassination, as was George W. Bush, H.W. Bush. Right. So we're back to him again. These things just keep circling round and round, and Perdomo was part of that team, supposedly. But he's the guy that ran up to Chapman, or is said to have done, and said, "My God, do you know what you've done?" And Chapman is said to have responded, "I've just shot John Lennon," right?
Correct. And supposedly, according to which story you go by, Perdomo either took the gun out of Chapman's hand at the time, or Chapman dropped the gun, and Jose Perdomo kind of kicked it away. And at this time, by that time, we had other people on the scene, and one of the other Dakota employees grabbed the gun, took the gun, and took it off of the scene down into the basement of the Dakota, and waited for the police drive, which came in like 2 minutes. The police were on scene within 2 or 3 minutes of all of this happening. So I'm sure it was a very big, cluster F of a scene, but and it happened in rapid succession. But yes, Jose Perdomo is really the only either suspect or victim on the scene that saw literally everything. And
after that, he just kind of
happened to be CIA.
Slinked off and faded into the background, didn't he? There's very little heard of him after that.
Right. He did continue to work there for years and years.
Oh, right. Okay.
So, yeah, he continued to work as the doorman for quite a few years after that.
Oh, right. Okay.
He's not there anymore, but at least I think 8 or 10 years after, he was still there. So just very interesting.
There's some inconsistencies in the accounts of how Lennon was shot as well. He's said to have been shot from behind by Chapman with the bullets coming out through, his chest, the exit wounds. And yet there were some inconsistencies with some of the medical reports, I think, there, which were claiming that he was shot from the front with the exit wounds coming from the rear. So there's discrepancies even with, that aspect of it.
Oh, absolutely. There's a ton of discrepancies. So again, depending on the account that you take into account and believe, there's a host of different interpretations going on. But I think what's really important, I think, to remember when we're talking about this is there was literally no real investigation as to what happened, because they arrested their suspect on site. He pled guilty. There was no real investigation. So all of this is just kind of speculation, and in one way or another. And that evening we already had the evening in question, we already had media outlets reporting on exactly what happened. And so it was like that. Those initial media reports are still exactly the same media reports that we get now. They haven't ever changed. Nobody was on site to see. There was no witnesses. Nobody was interviewed. So it's kind of just almost seems like it was like hearsay passed to one to the next. And with that, we have a lot of different, it's kind of like the telephone game. It starts out with one thing, you say something to somebody else, it gets slightly changed, and then they said something else and it gets slightly changed. And so there's a lot of different versions of what exactly happened. But as far as we know, from what was recovered on site, the gun that Chapman used was a .38 Special, which is a 5-shooter gun. And he used hollow tip bullets. So we have the actual bullets that were used. So we're pretty sure that that's true. And we have the gun that was used. So we're pretty sure that that's true, even though it was removed from the crime scene and then brought back later. But that's a different topic. So the coroner, or the medical examiner rather, had said that he believed from the way that the wounds were placed that he was shot at point blank range. So right up on him. He said his words, a good shot group, which means it wasn't just random. It was like successive, right at one after another. And with a Magnum revolver, which is like a much larger sized revolver. So right there you have a discrepancy. But supposedly Mark David Chapman shot 5 shots, all 5 of his bullets. He used hollow tip bullets, which are supposed to, and I'm not a ballistics